We don't want to record when we don't know we're recording. Anyway, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Washoe County Regional Animal Services Advisory Board. It is Friday, July 26, 2024. We started right at 9 a.m. and we're calling to order, and I'm going to ask the clerk to read the roster, see who's here.
Naomi Dewar, Chair.
Here.
Paul Anderson, Vice Chair.
Here.
Trudy Broussard. Mary Luz Garcia is not here yet. Jill Fisher.
Present.
And members Diaz Dixon and Julie McMahon are absent today.
Okay, thank you. We'll next have our salute to the flag, and I'm going to ask Dave Solero to lead us, please.
Please join me in the salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much. And then, Madam Clerk, could you provide the instructions for providing public comment via Zoom and phone?
That's actually the DDA's
Or
responsibility.
or Madam DA?
And for the record, Mara Luz Garcia is here.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer Gustafson for the record. This meeting is being held in the Commission chambers, and it's also available via Zoom webinar. To attend the meeting today via Zoom, please log into the Zoom webinar at the link that's found on the first page of today's meeting agenda. You can also join the meeting by typing zoom.us into your computer browser, click Join a Meeting on the Zoom website, and enter webinar ID 924-8963-2163. For those of you who would like to join by telephone only, you can dial 1-669-900-9128 and enter webinar ID 924-8963-2163 and press pound. For those wishing to provide public comment via Zoom today, you can utilize the raise hand feature during any public comment period. To provide public comment via telephone only, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. And we'll turn next to public comment. Madam Clerk, have you received any cards for public comment?
We do have some public comment.
Okay. If you could call them. Could you say their name and call them?
Good morning. Can you hear me? I'm going to try to speak loud today. I am Tracy Dean, Director of Community Cats, a nonprofit 501c3 formed in 1999. I appreciate being here today, and I appreciated last meeting that I was able to give a presentation. I forgot the last page of my public that was going to be up on the video board last week or last meeting, so I just wanted to read that very quickly because it's pretty important. And this is from the Managing Free Roaming Cat Population to Meet Your Goals from the Alliance for Contraception for Dogs and Cats. When TNR is done more intensively in the beginning of a project, it pays off in terms of greater population size reduction, better cost efficiency, and less work required later on. In short, despite its initial cost, high-intensity TNR provides more bang for the buck, also referred to as front-loading. High-intensity TNR can reduce preventable kitten deaths by over 95%, a reduction that is considerably greater than other management approaches, and increase cumulative life saving. Also, another quote from that document that is in the packet that you got at that last meeting. Combining TNR with outreach to reduce abandonment, adoption programs for social cats, and management of resources, meaning food and shelter, is likely to be more effective than any single approach on its own. Engaging other organizations that may specialize in outreach and adoption can keep a TNR organization focused on the mission of high-intensity TNR. And I did give a mid-year update that you all should be having that just talks about where the Community Cats Group is at this time of this year. Yes, thank you. Dogs, we did some dogs. We 21 dogs and puppies.
What does that mean?
We partnered with a group called Healthy Paws that needed some help to transport 21, what ended up being 21 dogs and puppies from a home in Caliente, Nevada. And the SPCA of Northern Nevada was offering to put a young group of puppies and a mom in foster care and adopt everybody else out because they were all ready to be adopted out. And because they agreed to take them, I worked with Cindy and we drove overnight and went down and picked them up and brought them up
All right.
because they needed to get here.
All right, you are really a animal heroine, so thank you
was an
so
adventure.
much for
Thank
being
you.
here and all of the work that you do with the community cats, so very important to our community. Keep up
Thank
the
you.
great work. Okay. All right, and Madam Clerk, do we have any other public comment?
There is no other public comment at this
Okay.
time.
All right, and can you check on Zoom too to see if we have any raised hands?
There is no raised hands on Zoom.
All right, thank you so much. We'll close out public comment, and we'll move on to item 5, which is approval of our April 26, 2024 meeting minutes. And I hope everyone's had a chance to review the minutes, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve?
All right, excuse me, Mr. Anderson, thank you. Second, Ms. Broussard. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll turn next to item 6, which is our director's report. Welcome Cheyenne Schul, our director.
Good morning. Cheyenne Scholl for the record, Director of Animal Services. It's my pleasure to be here today to provide an update to you all from quarter 4 of fiscal year 24. And just as a reference, the statistics that I'll share with you all today are from quarter 4 fiscal year 24, but we also look at the same quarter over the previous 4 years, just for reference. So in today's presentation, one of the elements that I'd like to include are some of our challenges as well as some of our successes. And so when I talk about challenges, I'm going to share with you some of the staffing issues that we've had that impact directly program delivery, service delivery, and being able to have adequate coverage for all of our staff during our busiest time of year. So with regards to that, I'll talk about the division areas where we've experienced some vacancies and how that has impacted us.
This is a very interesting animated,
Just something to make sure you all are awake up there. So with regards to the animals that came into our facility in quarter 4, we have reflected both a decrease in cats and dogs, which we celebrate. That's something we want to continue to see trending downward. We received 1,244 cats, which is an 8% decrease, and we received just over 1,400 dogs, which is down 11%. But of note, we did see a slight increase of 3% of small animals, which includes reptiles, rabbits, birds, and things like that.
And Cheyenne, before you go on, it is hard to read the color, what the colors represent. So, and then going forward, maybe when these slides are made, they could upsize those legend. But could you just tell us which is which?
Absolutely. So starting from the bottom, those are cats. The light blue and then the darker navy blue is dogs. And then the very top orange color is those small animals, birds, reptiles,
Great.
Rabbits, things like that. So again, reflecting same quarter over the last 4 prior years. So the trend kind of went upwards for several quarters and then trending downward in 2024. And hopefully that will be a trend that we continue to experience. But with regards to animal caretaking staff, I have 7 animal caretakers. One is a lead caretaker who is also responsible for training new employees as well as working with rescue groups to get animals out. And so when you think about the number of animals that we took in just 1 quarter and that we provide care for animals 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 1 vacancy, which we did experience during this quarter, impacts us greatly. And so we have since filled that vacancy, but that person's going to take time to be trained and to be fully onboarded. And so every single animal that comes into our care that stays over their length of stay is impacting our staff and the rest of the animals in our care. And I'll talk a little bit more about that further in the presentation. So this slide represents animals broken out by species, so dogs and cats, and the trends that you see there related to the same quarter year over year. So since 2021, we have remained relatively consistent in the number of dogs that we took in. And conversely to that, cats significantly jumped from 2021 to 2023 with a slight downtick in 2024. So we're seeing more and more cats coming into our care. We're seeing more and more kittens coming in. So that is very indicative of something we all know, is that we have a shortage of spay and neuter in our community. And we also have more animals in our community, and more animals being born than there are homes to provide for them. And so it's imperative that we focus on resources to mitigate further births of animals that do not have homes that are coming into our shelter. So as most of you know, the stray hold period for Washoe County lost and found cats is 5 days, not including the day of impound. Our shelter was designed for that purpose, to hold lost and found animals for that 5 days and to swiftly move on. We also hold quarantine dogs, case animals, and things like that. So we carefully monitor the length of stay that both dogs and cats stay within our facility, because as I've already mentioned, every day that an animal stays over 5 days impacts us greatly. So within our shelter, we have 110 kennels, but 64 of those kennels are dedicated to stray animals. The remainder of those kennels are for quarantine, case animals, medical watch, isolation, and things like that. And so with regards to that stray hold demand, that's not a lot of kennel space for animals that come into us every single day. So it's imperative that we are monitoring the length of stay that animals are with us, and that we're moving them on their pathway out of our shelter quickly. So we have decreased our length of stay for dogs from 9 days in Q4 of '23 to 7 days, which is great. Again, every single day is an improvement. The goal is to get that back down to 5 to 6 days. Same tracking mechanism for cats. So what you'll note with cat length of stay, we are slightly up in Q4. Despite the fact that the stray hold period is 5 days, there are lots of variables with cats. So neonate kittens that come in oftentimes are transferred to our partners, Nevada Humane Society, for care and for foster homes to be providing additional care. And TNR cats that come in that are already ear-tipped, the goal is to get those cats back to their colony, and they're made available immediately. So those cats oftentimes will be transferred back to a TNR partner to get those cats back into their colonies. So those are just a couple of the factors that can indicate or impact the length of stay for cats. But we are definitely monitoring the capacity for cats and trying to make sure that we're shoring up how quickly we're moving cats out of our facility. One of the things that we're going to be doing for the next meeting is separating out the neonate kittens and the cats that move out and actually focusing on the stray cats so that we can monitor the cats that have the length of stay impact and hold up capacity in our care. So hopefully we'll have a little bit different slides to show you next time.
And Director Schul, I have to compliment you on these last couple slides, just in contrast to the earlier slide. These are incredibly good, easily visible. Kudos to your staff.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to mention about capacity is that we do have 92 cat enclosures again. 56 of those are dedicated to stray hold. So we've got quarantine, isolation cat areas as well. So we definitely have limited resources and space available for lost cats that come through our care. Tracking animals that come to us that are already microchipped is an important component that helps us figure out where our gap is in microchipping services to our community. Though we love to see that approximately half of the dogs that come through our care are already microchipped. So that tells me that microchipping is working. Our free program that we've been doing since 2011 is successful and we continue to push those free microchips. We still have work to do with cats, and showing 11% of the cats that come into our care, only 11% are microchipped, tells us that we do have to focus specific resources to cat families, cat owners, about the importance of getting their cats microchipped, along with identification externally so that we can get those cats reunited. But this is an important metric that we track to tell us where are our weaknesses and areas we need to focus on. And then moving on to animal outcomes. So the animals that come to us that aren't reclaimed by their owners oftentimes will be transferred to our adoption partners, as well as, of course, reunited with their owners, and then those that unfortunately are euthanized or die in our care. So we'll talk about the outcomes of the animals in Q4. So of course, the animal reunifications that occur by my field staff is one of our statistics that I love to talk about, because it's a win-win for everyone when we can get animals picked up that are lost, roaming around our county, back to their owner without impounding them. That is extremely important to spare those desperately needed resources, as well as staff care and time that we provide to animals that come into the shelter. So with regards to that, we're happy to be able to reunite approximately 40% of the field animals that come in. This isn't including the animals that are brought in over the counter. This is just field impounds. So with regards to the chart, from the bottom up, you're looking at animals that were returned to owner in the field, so 281 animals were returned in the field, and the top darker blue number is the animals that were returned or had other outcomes. So again, we kind of ride consistently around 40% of returning animals in the field out of all animals picked up. So that's a statistic that we're proud of. We will continue to improve, hopefully getting more and more animals reunited in the field through microchips, identification, research by my field officers, calling in some of those lost animal reports, doing some of that research in the field that is necessary to get these animals back home before bringing them to the shelter. This slide represents animals that were reunited after they were impounded. They were animals that were brought into the shelter, so not by a field staff, but brought in over the counter, and they were returned back to their owner after being impounded for however long. So we have a 30% success rate of those animals being reunited. And so what you're looking at is, from the bottom up, is animals impounded and returned, so 285 animals out of a total of 957, with 672 having other outcomes, so being transferred and or euthanized.
So that's not a really big number, it seems, of reunifications from the shelter.
Yes, the number decreases when animals come into the shelter, and some of the factors that can impact that is not all animals are lost, and so sometimes animals are intentionally brought to us as a lost animal, whether the person doesn't want it anymore, whether they found it outside of the county and they don't have anywhere else to take it, so they brought it to us. The owner doesn't know to look for it at our shelter. There's a variety of factors there. But there's also a number of cats that are not owned that are brought to us. There's not an owner looking for them because they're a feral cat, or they were born in the wild and there's not an owner. So there's a number of factors that impact that. And because we don't pick up cats, we don't really have that cat number to sway the statistics in the field side of things. So the next slide is representative of our rescue partnerships and the animals that left through our doors to rescue partners. And so for Q4, this represents Nevada Humane Society, SPCA of Northern Nevada, Rescue, Options Veterinary Care, Pet Network, and then a small lump of other rescue groups that pull from us on a routine basis. But as you can see, a good majority of the animals go to the Nevada Humane Society, our partners, at 88% of both dogs and cats over Q4, and a total of 1,389 dogs and cats went to rescue partners last quarter.
Is that the light blue? Is that, that's that medium blue?
The blue color is the Nevada Humane Society transfers, yes. It's really hard to see the percentage of other rescue partner transfers on this donut chart, but the good percentage of them went to the Nevada Humane Society. These are our most routine transfer partners. We do have approximately 25 to 30 rescue partners that we infrequently work with, depending on breed, species, needs of the animals that need to be placed into specific care and homes, but these are our most routine partners. And Animal Services does wish to express our sincerest gratitude to our partners, rescue partners, transfer partners who are doing the heavy lifting to get animals out. We recognize that across our industry that adoptions are down and there's lots of challenges with increased animal intake in shelters. And so for us to continue our success in Washoe County, it takes all of the partners and all of the nonprofits and all the rescue groups working together to provide live outcomes for the animals that are coming into our care. So we sincerely appreciate their support. So this is the animal euthanasia breakdown with cats on the left and dogs on the right, and the codes that we are currently utilizing to outcome them. These are going to change, and this is part of our working meetings with the Nevada Humane Society for how we outcome animals and how we are conveying to our community what is adoptable, what isn't adoptable. And so you'll see some changes most likely at the next meeting with regards to the outcome codes on these. But within Q4, 34 cats were euthanized for medical reasons, which can include quality of life, injury, illness, things that cats experience may come in with or come down with while they're in our care. And so you'll note that in Q4, the number of medical euthanasias almost doubled from Q4 in 2023. And one of the reasons for that is that we now have our own full-time veterinarian. And so the internal review and quality of life decisions are being made much swifter versus before when we didn't have our own vet. And oftentimes we were relying on our partners at the Humane Society, Nevada Humane Society, or other partners to help with evaluating and potentially putting that animal into care or veterinary treatment. So those animals are definitely being given humane euthanasia much more promptly than previously. And then for dogs, we euthanized 46 dogs in the last quarter for various reasons. The categories from bottom to top, owner-requested euthanasia. Just to clarify, we don't offer owner-requested euthanasia. This is oftentimes what will happen if an animal is sick or injured and we already have it in our care and they request for us to euthanize the animal. We will euthanize it for them. Medical, there's a variety of things that fall under medical. There's medical severe and medical that generally will incorporate animals that are sick or injured beyond the capability to provide care for. Human aggression, there's a high number of those, and you'll generally see that. Even though we're down from last quarter, 23 from 41, human aggression is a common thing that we will see at our shelter with bite animals, dangerous dogs, and things of that nature. And those animals are too dangerous to be put back in the community. Bites, behavior animals. I talked a little bit last meeting about behavior quality of life decisions. So animals that are not adapting to kennel life and or presenting themselves well for adoption, present behaviors that are not safe and not going to be adoptable. So the dog I referenced at the last meeting was self-mutilating. So that behavior euthanasia decision is a quality of life decision that we opt to utilize sometimes on a case-by-case basis for those animals. Animal aggression is generally towards other animals. 6 of those were euthanized. And then the last category is animal disease laboratory. Those are animals that have to be tested for rabies, and they're euthanized before sent to the lab. Switching to field services, I have a total of 18 field service officers, one of which is a lead animal control officer with the training components for new officers, as well as identifying training internally for our own staff. But with regards to the coverage from Washoe County to every boundary of Washoe County, 365 days a year from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I have 18 staff. So as you can imagine, when we do experience vacancies, it hits us hard. We experienced 2 vacancies of officers this quarter. And so the difficulty in providing that same level of coverage and service delivery becomes impacted. Not to mention that this is our busiest time of year, the warm months of the year. We have the most calls for service. We have the most animals coming into our facility. And of course, we have the most vacation time requested. So it's difficult for us to provide that coverage. We have since, I'm happy to say, been able to fill these 2 vacancies, but it's going to take approximately 6 months to get those 2 staff members on board, fully trained and ready to roll. So I just want to preface the service delivery in the field area with, we're still struggling to do a great job out there, but it does impact us when we lose someone. So the field service calls that came in quarter 4, from bottom to top, is bite investigations at 340, noise complaints at 538, other and miscellaneous calls, which incorporates a wide array of things from assisting other agencies to setting traps, is 1,199. Stray animals is always the lion's share of our calls at 2,207. Unrestrained calls at 333, and then the very top number, that purple number there, is welfare calls at 752. So the most notable change that you'll note here is that our welfare calls took a 26% increase in this quarter versus last quarter 4. And part of that number can be attributed to the number of calls that we receive for hot cars and animals locked in hot cars. And I know that we have focused heavily every summer on partnering with our media and our nonprofits to get the message out there about the importance of educating our community about safe animal keeping and not bringing your animals with you if it's too hot, and not leaving your animals in your cars. In June alone, we received 168 hot car calls, but a total of 248 hot car calls last quarter. So that tends to continue throughout September until the temperatures drop down again, and so we spend a tremendous amount of time responding to hot car calls throughout the whole summer. And those calls are a priority for us, so my officers will drop everything to go to those calls and try to, rescue animals that are being left in a hot vehicle. Unfortunately, we did have one dog this quarter that perished in a car, that someone left them in the car and got too hot before we could get there. So it is a real issue for us that we continue to grapple with. So the more education we can get out there, the more campaigns we can get out there, the better it will be for our community to have awareness and to understand who to call when they see an animal, but more importantly, for pet owners to not leave their pets in their cars and to leave them at home where they're safe.
Before you leave this, which category do hot dogs fit in?
They fall into that very top one, that purple one, the welfare calls.
And what's the difference between the 2 orange colors? You said one was unrestrained and one was roaming, so I wasn't sure what the difference was.
So unrestrained can be a dog is with their owner, but they're not on a leash.
Oh.
And stray means a dog is out roaming the city and owner is
Without
nowhere
an
to be found.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question as we're talking about hot vehicles. How was the facility during the heat wave? Were you experiencing any challenges in keeping the animals cool?
I can speak only for my side. Maybe Jerlene can chime in when she presents on her side the struggles that we experience with heat. We have not had particular issues with the animal areas and heating. We did have some issues with heating during the winter months and keeping the animals warm. But that is a constant battle, and as our building ages, we will have to be starting to look forward and potentially focusing on our HVAC units and making sure that we're ahead of the game before something seriously goes wrong. But we have not had, knock on wood, issues with the animals, keeping the animals cool.
And then also on the hot car issue, I was just wondering, I know in Reno, they've really been focusing on some new signage about this issue, and I believe the mayor's been leading an effort with some community partners, but I didn't know if Animal Services was also engaged in that.
To my knowledge, we have not been asked to be engaged in that.
Okay.
We're happy to. We have been working with our partners at the Humane Society as well as the SPCA on campaigns to get billboards out there, to get,
Right.
different marketing campaigns out there to our community. But what I would really love to see is on a broader scale, a large percentage of what we've experienced is individuals who violate the Nevada revised statute that governs animals being locked in hot cars as well as children. They don't live here. They are visiting a casino. They're passing through, and so they may not necessarily appreciate the climate here and understand that northern Nevada, though we're high desert, it's very hot here in the summertime. And so I think a broader educational campaign and potentially getting our casinos involved to help us with signage and more of that education would be extremely helpful.
Well, is that ongoing? I mean, for example, do we have any billboards right now?
We do not currently have any billboards. No, we did a billboard campaign with the SPCA last year. To my knowledge, I don't think we have any currently going.
Well, I would love to see that. I know that some of the billboard companies are very community-minded, and I think it'd be worth an ask to all of them to see if they could partner with us right now. Here we are in the middle of summer. And the other thing is, I love your idea about the casinos, and I think that even if they posted notices at the doors, entering the casino to say, did you leave, a kid or an animal in a car? I mean, that might be something for Quinn, so, because she's right on outreach and media, right? Maybe she could tackle.
Yes, and another area that we could really use help from is businesses that aren't necessarily local, but, corporate. Costco is one of our most often visited parking lots for hot animals in cars. And so that would be, there's lots of business areas that we certainly could target, but casinos and Costco's and Walmart's come to the top when it comes to animals being locked in hot cars.
Well, and I know you have a lot of demand, so I guess my question is there something we can do as the advisory board, reaching out to the people that we're representing, whether our government agencies or our nonprofit partners? I would love, I think this is an excellent area for work for the advisory board. And I would like you to put some time thinking how we can particularly assist with this. Maybe it's a resource. I mean, each of us have some either council or commission funds. We don't have much at Reno, but I know the county has more per individual. But we do have some, and that sum could potentially be used to help you.
Sure.
As just an idea.
That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear any other advisory board members on this thought. Is this something we should engage in, I guess, or could engage in?
Paul Anderson, for the record, I think it's a great idea to figure out, I mean, obviously, the sooner the better.
That's what I mean, like, meet within the next 2 weeks if we could get some stuff.
What I'm thinking is along the lines of what you said, is our circle of influence. How can we help communicate to the businesses, the
Right.
groups in our area? So I would say, help us know how we can help you.
Certainly. I
Like
think the
maybe
big,
send us something with a list of if you think there's top 10, you already mentioned Costco, but if there's others too that are big regional draws, or if there are the casinos, just help us, and then we all have contact somewhere.
sure, I can send the board an overview of the top businesses locally.
That you respond to.
That we respond to for hot
Right.
car calls, and you start maybe deciding how you all can help us with overcoming the corporate challenges of getting signage and things like that we just simply don't have the manpower to do and to
Right.
follow. So I think that's an area that you certainly can help.
Okay, anyone else want to speak to this? Okay, well, it sounds like we're generally very supportive, and I know I definitely am, and I'd be willing to use some of my council funds if that's what it takes, or as Mr. Anderson mentioned, some of our influence or contacts
Great.
to help get this done.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we maybe could actually reduce this number instead of, having an increase in these welfare calls.
We would love that. Thank you very much. So this slide represents the outcomes of animal welfare calls, and from the bottom up, you are looking at the unfounded number of calls. So oftentimes we will receive calls that either the information was insufficient and that there wasn't founded welfare concerns. But largely what happens with these calls is we'll get sent to a hot car call and the car's already gone. So it's unfounded because they're already gone. But the next darker blue number there is other outcomes, and so education, working with the individual to come into compliance, that is the largest outcome number there at 534. And then that top number is notice of civil penalties and or citations, so that punitive approach. And that number has ebbed and flowed over the years, and it just really largely depends on what the violation is and how compliant is the pet owner to remedying the situation, or how egregious is it, and is it something that we give them an opportunity to rectify.
Well, on that note, Cheyenne, are there people that have multiple times that they get cited with animals in hot cars?
Yes.
Really?
So the individual who was cited for the animal that perished was cited the week before for the same violation.
Wow.
Yes. So sometimes you can't help people figure it out, unfortunately.
Wow.
And animals pay the price.
Jill Fisher for the record. How many citations are you guys willing to give before further action is taken?
Cheyenne for the record. So if they were issued notice of civil penalties, the notice of civil penalties are issued in a series of 3 that sequentially go up, and then they can be cited, and we can cite them as many times as necessary. They have to go to court for those citations.
Each
and it
one?
really, for each citation, and so it really depends on what the outcome is in court. So we can continue to cite them.
But I think she's saying before you would up the ante, right? Either take the dog or cat or do something else.
It depends on what the violation is. If it's an egregious violation, of course, there are times that we can obtain a warrant and seize the animal, or if it's happening in our presence, we can seize the animal without a warrant. So it really depends largely on what's going on and what the circumstances are.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
And then moving on to our outreach program, and again, talking about resource voids, we have about 2 full-time employees and a quarter of another employee that support all of our outreach services. So we lost a full-time employee during this quarter. My other full-time employee is about to go out on maternity leave. So the reason I'm sharing that is that we will have, and we anticipate having, significant impacts to our outreach in the next quarter and quarters to follow until we're back up to full staff. And so we are doing a lot with a little in terms of outreach, but again, when you have a small division area that's impacted by 1 vacancy, it impacts you significantly. And so we're doing the very best that we can to recruit for the program assistant that we need now to bring that person on board before my program coordinator goes out on maternity leave. So that's going to be a challenge for us, but we're going to do the very best we can to prioritize what the most important outreach programs are for us to make sure that we sustain those, and then some of the other ones may have to be temporarily suspended. But for quarter 4, some of our program metrics were 84 CARES medical support program areas we were able to deliver for those individual pet owners who have needs that aren't able to be met through our veterinary partners. And 238 seniors were served with pet food, with 552 pets of the seniors being served with pet food. 1,142 vaccines given, which is a significant increase from quarter 4 of the year before. And 594 pets vaccinated, again, a significant increase from the quarter from fiscal year 2023. So we've been heavily focusing on improving our vaccine clinics, the flow. Since we have our own veterinarian, she has been tremendous in helping us work out a better flow and safer for the animals to get animals through our classroom and working them through safely. So we are excited to continue that program. That is one of our priorities, is our vaccine clinic, but it does take a tremendous amount of resources for one vaccine clinic, the day before and the day after, to enter all the data, to schedule the appointments. So it is a lot of work to put these on, but we do feel that it's important to help with our pet health in our community and to prevent animals from unnecessarily coming into our shelter and dying. So we did 5 vaccine clinics with 599 pets served, 463 rabies shots, and 361 microchips implanted during those clinics. That does not include microchips implanted at our shelter anytime during business hours for any member of Washoe County. We did 4 other events, 2 microchip clinics, and we did a career presentation. We also went to Lincoln Park Elementary School to talk to the children there about animal services, and we also participate every summer with the SPCA Kids Camp. And then last but not least, we did 3 pet distribution events with 238 unique seniors served and 552 pets fed. And one of the other areas that my program coordinator works very focused on is grants. And so we're excited to be able to celebrate that we received a $7,500 grant from Banfield Foundation to help us equip our surgical clinic to be able to fully do spay and neuters and treat the animals that come into our care. So as most of you know, we have a surgery clinic that was widely underutilized until we had our full-time veterinarian come on board, and she's helping us select equipment that's up to date and necessary for us to be able to fully provide services to the animals that come into our care, but also hopefully eventually to provide public services. Petco Love Lost is a grant that we recently received for $20,000, which is extremely exciting. We are going to be focusing that on a lost and found text program, and we will be sharing more details with you in the months to come about what that program looks like. There are many other shelters who are utilizing this program that offers information automatically when a number is texted if you lost or found a pet, that helps walk people through what to do, because it can be very overwhelming if you've lost a pet and very stressful. And this kind of helps break it down to a little bit more of an easier process and automated messaging. We applied for a grant from Firehouse Subs Foundation to update some of our emergency fire response equipment. So we have some shelf life that's expiring on some of our fire protective gear for my field staff that do help in evacuations and setting up emergency shelters during fires. So we haven't heard yet if we have been selected for that grant, but we did apply for it. And then last but not least, we did apply for another Petco Love grant for more equipment. We have to buy an x-ray machine and a whole host of equipment to outfit our surgical clinic at the shelter to be prepared for all the medical needs that we have. So we haven't heard yet if we've received and been selected for that grant, but we are hopeful. That concludes my updates to you all. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 18th at 9 a.m. At this location. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
All right. Well, we asked a few during your presentation, but let me open the floor. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, actually, a couple of questions for you. So when you referred to the stray hold length, is that based on like national standard or best practices?
Cheyenne Shaw, for the record, that stray hold period has been in place in Washoe County for as long as I've been here. And I can tell you that a majority of communities have 5 days or less as a stray hold period. So it is pretty commonplace for shelters. Some communities with larger populations and more demand on their shelters have a decreased stray hold time.
Okay, and then kind of along those lines, you were talking about the reunification time. Do you guys track day 1 versus day 3, day 5, the percentages of reunification during that period?
We have the ability to track that, and we will be incorporating that into our overall reunification updates to help us determine how were they reunified. Was it by microchip? Was it by tag? Was it by website? We do have the ability to track that and to use that as kind of steering priorities for us.
Because I think that would be of interest to know that as well as the day. So, 60% of them are reunited within day 1, day 2, whatever. Because I really wonder if maybe that's something we should be looking at, is that stray hold, and see if we need to rethink about where you go. If that's the border that you're up against, maybe we need to look about, you know, if someone hasn't come to get their pet within 3 days, 4 days, whatever, that now they start moving through the process to be rehomed. Just a thought.
Makes sense. And you all will remember that when we talked about the fee updates, which my hope is we'll be bringing forward to the Board of County Commissioners in August, we talked about the forgiveness for the first 48 hours. That was part of that incentive, is to get people to come in and get their pet quickly, and we wouldn't charge you the fees. And a lot of shelters are implementing programs that are similar to that, to incentivize people to come in and get their animals. And so we are thinking along those lines, and being able to track that data is already there. It's just a matter of reporting it and making it make sense.
All right, thank you.
Very, very good. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation, very thorough. I'm interested in the field service calls, and I'm looking at the graph that you provided, or the chart, strays and, let's see, unrestricted and welfare calls are taking up the majority of what's keeping our staff busy out in the field, correct? What I'm interested in, I'm not going to be able to attend the next meeting because I have a conflict with RTC, but before the next quarterly meeting, I was wondering if staff would be able to provide us kind of like a heat map of where these calls are taking place throughout the entire county. I know all of us kind of live and work in different regions, and I think kind of going back to what we were talking about, the corporate engagement, but I think there's a lot that we can do if we know there are areas. For example, I represent Sun Valley. I'm very well aware of the traffic and things that happen up there with animal welfare calls and strays. There's a lot of self-regulation that happens on some of the community Facebook pages and reunification efforts that happen amongst those neighbors. But we could help amplify the work that you're doing in the needs in the areas, zip codes that are the most active, and if there's anything we can do as individuals in the realms that we work in to help make it easier for your staff out there in the field. So a heat map would be wonderful. However that looked, and even if it's not a geographical map, even just some sort of representation for us to know where things are happening the most.
Commissioner Garcia, I did not forget that you planted that seed in my mind a year ago.
No worries.
You would love to see the breakdown of commissioner calls and where animal service calls come from. We are working on heat mapping, and we are also working on lost and found heat mapping, so that if someone has lost a pet or found a pet, you can hover over the animal on our website to see where it was actually picked up. So we are working on a number of projects that will be, I think, extremely helpful to our community, to you as commissioners and elected officials, to help with that information. But I do think we have the capability at the present time to bring a heat map forward with where animal calls come from. And so I can probably integrate that into the next update to this board.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other thoughts on this? It was very comprehensive. Maybe just have your staff work on few of those charts that are harder to read. I know that within those programs, you can actually upsize the text, and that may be all you need to do. You know, they can manually set that rather than have it auto set. And then, you know, that would just be a little bit helpful, reduce the strain on your presentation. But super good. I'm really looking forward to how we can help you. Commissioner Garcia, the heat map would be super helpful, but also, again, this idea that, especially while your staff's still here, of getting us on mission to go help you with the hot car issue.
Great.
Okay, all right, anyone else? All right, well, we'll close out that item. It looks like thank you so much. We'll be moving on to item 7, which is about Washoe County Park Rangers and enforcement of Washoe County Code chapters. And again, this was driven by some of the recent news reports that we've had about, the animal shooting, but also as a council member, and I don't know if others experience this, I get a fair amount of calls saying that there are unleashed dogs in particular in parks that require leashing. And then I'm a little bit confused if that is the responsibility of our park staff, or if it is the responsibility of animal services. So if you can help us with that one, that would be helpful.
For the record, Colleen Wallace Barnum, Park Operations Superintendent. Thanks for having me here this morning. I'm looking forward to
So
providing.
you actually are in parks
I am
for
in
the
parks.
county?
I am the Park Operations Superintendent, correct. And we just started this citation authority program. So I'm going to go through some history for you, go through how the process is, and at the end, we have some Q&A, so please, you can interrupt me at any time and ask questions. So I'll get started.
And your name again?
Colleen Wallace Barnum.
Okay.
Yep. The county code, chapter 95, is what governs Washoe County. It's basically our park rules and regulations. On May 24th of 2022, we did do an update to that chapter 95 code. And one of the updates and changes that we made was to add citation authority for enforcement officers. So the enforcement officers would be considered park rangers and district park managers. Both of those positions, they're uniformed employees with badges, and they are regularly making public interactions on a daily basis. So you might ask what's happened for the last 2 years, and why did we just start now? So they've been working closely with, many of our staff have been working closely with internal county departments, one of which is Regional Animal Services, because really they're probably as close to us with uniformed officers really, making public interactions on a regular basis. So we wanted to understand current acceptable practices that Washoe County follows, in addition to having a review of all the policies, procedures, and the forms needed for the program. So again, Regional Animal Services Code Enforcement is part of our Community Services Department. That's a complaint-driven program, but it is also they do have citation authority in that, in their function. And then, of course, the DA's office has been super helpful. The Office of the County Manager, that administrative hearing office. So a lot of the similar functions that we're going to be doing is very much what Regional Animal Services is currently doing. Our park rangers are part of the Park Ranger Association of California. There's actually a Nevada chapter, which is great. It's an opportunity for networking, and I'm really learning about best practices. So since that board approved the change to Chapter 95 in May of 2022, our staff have been reaching out to other agencies who have citation authority but aren't peace officers. So that's a really important distinction, right? We're not carrying weapons other than OC spray, pepper spray. So we want to make sure that we're training them appropriately for what they're going to be doing out in the field. So to move on to training, the issuing of citations, so this change that we're making, we want to make it really clear that this is not the primary role and function of these district managers and park rangers. This is just another part of their duties, but a peripheral duty, if you will, but not the main focus. And they already make visitor contacts on a regular basis. Off-leash dogs is constant. So we're hoping to mitigate some of these issues. And then obviously the creation of a solid set of policies and procedures, along with extensive training, helps provide them the background to do their job to the best of the ability. So the policies and procedures we created are on the left-hand side. So basically the pillar of visitor safety and resource protection is the main function, one of the main functions of park rangers, and then issuing a notice of civil penalty if in fact there's an infraction or a rule violation that we feel we need to issue a civil penalty on. There is an opportunity to exclude people from a park. You can exclude them for up to 24 hours. As the least amount you can do is a 24-hour period up to a year. And 30 days would potentially be a little bit more realistic. If you went up to a year, it would require my, a higher level authority in the Parks Department to come in and actually approve that. And then a use of force policy, we want to make sure we're being appropriate out there and utilizing, the force that we're trained to. And then a chemical restraint policy, that's in relation to the OC or pepper spray. And then there's a bunch of forms. The forms are on the right-hand side. Many of these forms, we mirrored a lot of the language, had the DAs look at it, so we've got forms very similar to what Regional Animal Services uses. So it's been very helpful to have their input on a lot of our procedures and policies and forms. So let me go back, because I want to make sure we're clear on this. We have a warning notice. Since we're just starting this program, our goal is to warn people. Like, we don't want to start right off the bat issuing notices of civil penalty. We want to educate the public. We want to start slow. We want to make sure they're familiar and aware. We're working with our communications team on getting that information out there, so we're not surprising anybody. There's actually the sandwich board signs at every one of our regional parks where our park rangers are staffed on a regular basis, so we want to make sure the public is well aware of this possibility before we issue any notices of civil penalty. So back to training. The following is a list of training. So we basically, basic first aid, de-escalation tactics, report writing, introduction to an ICS, incident command system. So understanding, kind of, if you're first on scene, you're the incident commander, until somebody of a greater authority comes over and takes over. OC training for the pepper spray, and then defensive tactics. In the month of June, kind of towards the latter part of June, the park rangers and district managers did do ride-alongs with a lot of the Regional Animal Services field staff, and it was super helpful to kind of go through the process of issuing notices of civil penalty, or just being with them and seeing what they do on a daily basis. So it's always helpful to see other entities in the county and how they manage their functions. Also wanted to note that 4 of our 9 staff have attended a park ranger excellence school, and we plan to have all attend in the next 3 years. So we'll rotate everybody through that school.
And who provides that school?
That is through, it's in Estes Park, but it's on a national level. It's it's part of the National Park Rangers Association. Okay, so let's go into the fine schedule. So Washoe County, the same code that governs the fines, I should call them fees, because we are calling them fines, but I'll get to that in a moment. It's the same thing that governs, the Chapter 125 is governing Regional Animal Services as well for enforcement remedies and penalties. And then per that code, there's clear direction that the fee schedule needs to be adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. Our fee/fine schedule did get adopted on June 25th of this year. And then the reason we're calling it a fine schedule is Parks has a fee schedule. So we charge fees for, people coming to Bowers Pool or reserving a picnic area. So those are our park fees. So we felt like a fine schedule was a better way to really envelop this program and what the costs are associated with a penalty. And then per Washoe County Code, Chapter 95.510, civil penalties may be imposed no less than 100 and no more than 1,000. So those are our parameters. When we met with Regional Animal Services and Code Enforcement back in 2022, 2023, we said, what would you do differently if you could do anything differently? And they said, raise the fines. So we started higher because we felt like we didn't want to go back and raise the fines. So much like Regional Animal Services, we have those 3 violations. The first violation is $200, second violation $400, third violation $800. That's for the same infraction, so it has to be that same infraction. If it's a new infraction, it's going to go down to that $200, right? And then we did this for every one of the codes. It's the same amount of money. So we were thinking about tiering it, but for simplicity, we wanted to just keep it consistent. So that is the fine schedule for each one of our potential violations. And then the process is much like Regional Animal Services, a little different in terms of past the 30 days. So the violator can pay a fine. Within that 30-day period, they get a 50% discount. So rather than having to pay the $200 fine, they can pay $100, they're done. They can move on. They can also choose to contest it, contest that civil penalty, and then they can request that administrative hearing and go through the administrative hearing office within that 30-day calendar notice. So that fee that is paid, or the fees, if they're paid, are, they have to go, that has to actually go to the office of the county manager. So there's the parks will collect the fee if the infraction is paid within the 30 days. If it gets into the administrative hearing, now the money goes to the office of the county manager. It's just a distinction of how, where the money would follow. And then after 30 days, we would go to collections. We don't have like hey, just so you know, you didn't pay your fine. After 30 days, we're going straight to collections. So that's a little bit different than Regional Animal Services. They give a buffer. And then if the collections is unsuccessful, a lien can be placed on the property of the violator. So we're hopeful that's not going to get to that point. So what are the goals? Obviously, we want to have all the fines paid within the 30-day period. And then this kind of just goes into where they're deposited and kind of what I mentioned before. And then just to reiterate that we're working with the communications team to inform our park visitors of the upcoming changes. Sandwich board signs at the regional parks. There's actually a QR code on the sign that links right to our webpage that, you can find Chapter 95, you can find the fine schedule, you can, get more information. And then we are creating short videos that we're going to have on websites and social media posting to just kind of keep that message out there. We're hoping to do that for maybe 6 months, if not longer. So then that ongoing messaging will help keep the public informed. So the overall program goals, just so everybody's aware, is to maintain safe parks and provide resource protection for everyone to enjoy. We want to minimize the use of additional resources because we have from time to time had to call Regional Animal Services for the dog off leash, or, called the sheriff's office for, minor infractions in their mind. In our mind, it's different, right? So the park rangers and district managers can really, I think, take care of the functions in the parks much better with this opportunity and not have to, rely on outside resources. And then again, providing the warnings and maintaining the compliance with our ordinances. And then as appropriate, keeping the citations in the civil process. We don't really want to have to go to court. But if it is a misdemeanor and it is something that becomes, a citation, we'll go that direction if we need to. And then if we do, we also then will engage with other entities. We have to call the sheriff's office because we can only issue notices of civil penalty. If we go into citation, we have to have law enforcement available for those. And that is all I had. So I'd be happy to talk a little bit about the off-leash. So on a regular basis, and I was in the field for 17 years for Washoe County Park, so I'm very familiar with having to talk with people. So I think when the conversation and the warning is, hey, the next time I have to come talk to you, we do have a $200 fine associated with a dog off of a leash. We are hopeful that we are going to get much better compliance. Again, the warning, there'll be a written warning issued, so we have documentation of that, and then we can go straight to a notice of civil penalty. It is absolutely a problem in our community. We've been working with Regional Animal Services for a long time trying to figure out ways to communicate to people, to have have an educational approach, and we now have this backup of, a fine associated with it. So we just hope people, understand that you can have a friendly dog, but just because your dog's friendly doesn't mean everybody in the park wants your dog to jump up on them, or an unfriendly dog who's leashed shouldn't bear the brunt of your dogs coming up to them and then creating potential problems. Right. So we are acutely aware of that, and we hope that this will help curb a lot of our issues, and hopefully phone calls coming to you.
Yeah. So are you going to start, it sounded like if it was me, you might start the first time you meet them with an oral warning. You might escalate to a written warning, actually. I'm going to give you a ticket for this. And then you're saying, and if you give them a written notice, does that automatically have a penalty, or is that you could waive the penalty at that point and maybe implement it on a third strike? Or
so the written would be a warning. So we could do a verbal warning, written warning, notice of civil penalty.
Gotcha. And so You haven't done any notice of civil penalties yet? You're
Not
just
yet.
starting?
Not yet, we're
Just
just
starting in August?
You know, we rolling out slowly, started July 1st is the program. So again, we're starting with this public education campaign. We've got all the documents in order. We have to get, them out to the rangers and then start the process. So, they're already verbally talking with a lot of our park guests about, hey, we could potentially issue this. Please be aware, that you are responsible for knowing and complying with the rules of the park.
Okay. Are there any parks that you see this problem more, like Rancho San Rafael or something else?
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, every one of our parks, we have the problem. So I would say certainly our parks that are visited more heavily, percentage-wise, we're going to see it a little bit more often. But places like, where we have off-leash areas, it's crazy. Even though we have an off-leash area, people still have their dog off-leash all throughout the park because for some reason they think,
The
well,
whole
the entire park's friendly for off-leash, and
Okay.
that's not the case, in those specific areas. So we're hopeful, again, that that's just part of that education process.
Now, how do you work with the city? So we have 88 parks in the city of Reno, and those aren't county parks. So are city park rangers responsible for those, or can you assert county, you cover, the county's a county. Are you only working at county parks, or what's the story there?
Yeah, we are going to be focusing, that's where we would respond, and that's where our staff, that's where we work out of. So yes, we would be focusing our energy on the county parks specifically, mostly the regional parks, which are more heavily visited. But certainly I know that there are city park rangers, and so perhaps, with this happening with the Washoe County, it could then, maybe City of Reno could mirror that, or City of Sparks could mirror that.
That's what I would like to recommend, is that, as you roll this out, and I know you need to get experience under your belt, but just as you were coached and mentored by Animal Services, it seems that you could transfer that to our, to cities that have parks to help them, because I'm not getting called about Rancho San Rafael. I'm getting called about Damani Ranch Park, which is a city park. I'm getting called about our smaller neighborhood parks, that are small. They're maybe even less than an acre, or maybe an acre, and we have dogs running around, and people are intimidated, and those are the calls I'm getting, and even though you have your program, I'm still going to get these calls. And I really don't know how to handle them, and I would love to see this coordination and mentoring with our city park staff and
Yeah.
talk about a similar program.
I agree, and I think a regional effort would be wonderful. So, so it would be really helpful because I think people don't necessarily know, right?
They
If they're
don't
in a
know.
park next to their neighborhood, they don't know if it's City of Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County, they just know that's the park they go to. And honestly, it's better regionally to approach it the same.
Right. Now, a question, okay, so let me open it up here to others on this topic. Park rangers, Mr. Anderson, anything, or someone over here? Yeah, Ms. Fisher?
Jill Fisher for the record. I am curious, because I've heard you mention a few times in your presentation, pepper spray and defensive training. Is that for use and concern with aggressive animals, or is that confrontations with owners, or both?
It could potentially be both, but I would say it's mostly meant for human interactions with, with somebody who could potentially become volatile when, addressed, or when we have a discussion about a civil penalty, somebody then takes a whole different approach. So that defensive tactic is really for staff safety and making sure we have not only themselves safe, but other park visitors safe. Like, we're trying to create a safe scene and maintain a safe scene.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Let me ask, this sort of elephant in the room question about the shooting. We had talked with the director about, do we need additional regulations in the park about carrying guns, whether concealed or open carry? What's the story there?
So, great question, and I actually did do an update at our Open Space and Regional Park Commission meeting on Wednesday at the request of one of our park commissioners. So Cheyenne and I, and actually many of her staff, we've been meeting and talking about this incident. I would say that incident is an anomaly.
Okay.
That is not normal, regular behavior. And so, initially, the owner of the dog that that died, they started this GoFundMe page
Right.
and the desire, right, to be, maybe separate large dogs and small dogs. Well, at that particular area where it happened at the pasture, it's a multi-use pasture, Rancho Centerville Park. It's used for the balloon races. It's used for multiple events. We can't fence
Right.
within that area. So the desire then was to use that money in working with Regional Animal Services and animal behaviorists to utilize those funds to do some public education about dog fights, about aggressive behavior, about what do you do with your dog if the aggressive dog comes up to it. So focusing on education and really getting people to understand your dog primarily, right? That's the most important thing, and then its interaction with potentially with other dogs. So, in terms of, there's only so many things we can manage within that realm that happened, and it was a tragic incident, no question. But I think we'll start with education and kind of see where we can go from there.
But let me ask you, for that odd occurrence, are there, so today, you can have carrying guns in parks, you can have open carry, I guess, not just concealed carry. But, so the question is, though, where the police are involved, because we've had a series of these, where residents, either in their neighborhood or at a park, are shooting an animal, and usually killing that animal, not just hurting the animal. I mean, is this a conversation we should be having with our police forces about citations? Like, we in Reno, we want to stop the behavior. We want there to be a consequence. When you're going to discharge your firearm in an area that you cannot discharge a firearm in a congested area, but you do, the allegation is, while I'm being threatened, my life's in danger. Is there, as you expand, is there a possibility of continuing the expansion conversation with our police forces?
Absolutely. I think it's a good conversation to have. I think it being that this happened right on the cusp of our ability to issue citations, it was like, hey, we have to have a conversation about how this is, how this
Would
could
you have
potentially be
issued a
approached.
citation even after the fact?
So I think the key thing, and Cheyenne can also relate to this, it has to be witnessed. So in order to be able to issue that, you have to witness it, at least the officer, right? And then if they don't, we have to get witness statements. So then it's really based on the witness statements and what happens there. So, and then the other thing that became, and I don't remember the chapter, sorry, it was chapter, it was an NRS. Basically, it was the protection of personal property, which was the other dog that was being attacked. So, it's a gray area, and it would be wonderful if we could, since this happened, maybe tease out what we could do better. I think we can always do things better. So maybe we find out how we could do it better. We can't, I don't know that we can prevent people from bringing the weapons into the park, but certainly the discharge. And then, we talked about, well, we do have that park exclusion policy. Could that be something that we could have done or could potentially do in the future? So, we have some other mechanisms to maybe manage, at least that individual.
I mean, that would
better.
have been a great thought. I mean, I'm not, maybe that's the, an appropriate measure for the incident is to exclude, because of the maybe rash response. So, but was it in place then, or it was just that you weren't prepared to execute?
We weren't prepared at the time to execute, but we were planning to roll it out July 1st. It happened in March, so we were
Gotcha.
still a little early. But gosh, it brought a lot of questions to mind on how to manage something like that. God, hopefully we never have that happen again.
I have a quick question too, and it may be a little off topic, but last night I happened to attend at the Nevada Museum of Art a presentation on wild horses. And there were a variety of presentations, but one of the people that presented was a woman who rides her domestic horse around Nevada, educating people about wild horses and other things. And in this, she only gave one example because time was limited, so very quickly, she was on one of her very long rides going around the entire border of Nevada when a band of wild horses got very interested in her domesticated horse, had been a wild horse. And in this case, there was a very large stallion that was the band leader, not just the band, but the entire group, and brought in like 50 horses, and they were going to attack her and her one horse. And what she ended up doing, and per the story last night, was she ended up, this was very interesting to me, but I don't know if you've heard about it. She used she had a stick and she had a plastic bag on the end of the stick, which makes a loud noise. And it's like a white waving object. And she ended up standing between her horse and this charging stallion that was going to take on her horse and probably, she said, she's very familiar with horses, have a fight to the death. These two horses were fully engaged. And she ended up stepping between them and taking out her stick with the white bag on it and shake it, makes a noise. And I thought that was the first time I ever heard of something like that. It was very interesting that that really had a deterrent effect, stopped the stallion in its tracks. It ended up backing off, and the entire 50 horse, I guess, herd, not just band, backed off. And just something like, it's not a lethal weapon, but it was scary to the animals. And this is a giant horse. It was one of the biggest ones she's ever seen in her life. And it struck me, her willingness to step between the two animals and her deploy of this tactic. And I didn't know what you recommend, I think it would be informative for us to just know the key element. You said we advise people on how to, when animals are confronting each other, what is the right. I'm sure you want to take your animal and leave the scene, but that's not always possible. What do you guys recommend?
Well, and we would be definitely going with Regional Animal Services recommendation in addition to the animal behaviorist, right?
Yeah.
So that's that education program. And there are a variety of tactics. I'm not familiar with them personally, so I don't think I could
But maybe
mention that.
this is a question for
But yeah,
Shannon.
this is what we want to do. We want to give people tools.
Yeah.
So that if these interactions happen in the future, okay, I've learned about this tool. This is what I could potentially do to help. And get the dogs separated and
Yeah.
move them away from each other safely. So
So Cheyenne, do you have a thought on that? Just education for your board members.
Sure. Cheyenne, for the record, I know that Colleen and I did have discussions about this, and the idea was born to provide some educational resources to our community. But before that has been able to transpire, Kelly Bolin is the behaviorist that we contract with at our shelter, but she also had worked directly with the dog owner whose animal was deceased, that died in the incident. She had created a GoFundMe that went towards providing some education back to our community, which I think was a very gracious thing to do. And so Kelly Bolin provided educational workshop for our community. I believe it was last month. She has another one scheduled in the fall. I don't have the date in front of me. That's free, and it's for our community to talk about safety and interactions between people and animals in open places like parks.
Okay, that's
and
cool.
it talks about how to break up a fight and the importance of not having a leashed animal in an off-leash area and why, and all of the things that lay persons may not know or understand. And I think that's a great place to start. And then if we can continue with that education with some of our rangers to help people if they do have interactions, hopefully not to this magnitude, but that in the future we can provide those educational resources, whether it be just verbal conversations, whether it be infographic signage. We haven't gotten that far in the conversation, but I think that's the direction that Colleen and I had decided would be best for Washoe County Parks, and then if we can bring it into a regional conversation, even better.
Well, just a final thought on this. Maybe share with Kelly this idea that this woman with the horse deployed was very interesting. I mean, I may carry it wasn't a very big stick. She brought it out and showed us. She brought it with her and showed us how she deterred. And just as a side note, I should have mentioned, they're riding across the range, across Nevada. And her animal was sequestered for the evening, so you don't have a typical tree to tie up an animal in the middle of Nevada. She carries a little battery-operated electric fence. And so she and her horse were in that little space, maybe it's as big as this, and were confined. She said she didn't think her horse was going to stay in this, was being charged. So anyway, I should have added that, like, why is her horse even with her, and is she holding her horse while she's trying to deal with this problem? But just maybe pass that on to Kelly. I had never heard it, but this is apparently worked very effectively. And I mean, how much better even than spray or guns or other tools, really startled and stopped the altercation. So,
We provide some simple tools like that and advice for individuals that are less than lethal tools to consider when you're walking your dog, and you never know when you're going to encounter an
Exactly.
off-leash dog. Pepper spray is obviously one of them. Whistles, air horns, umbrellas, things like that that can startle a dog enough for you to get away is really what we tell people. My officers will tell people, if take your own safety into your hands when you go out into the community, but be prepared to protect yourself. And those are definitely tools that are available to consider to protect you and your pet that are
Say
less
it one
than
more
lethal.
time, you said? Would you say those again?
They're umbrellas, so if you open an umbrella.
I think that's a similar concept
Pop it
to this.
open and makes that loud noise, and it's enough to startle a charging dog, enough for you to get away. Air horns are something simple you can buy that is loud enough to startle a charging dog. Pepper spray, of course, a whistle, something like that is something simple. And then also something as simple as a stick that you can utilize to use as a barrier between you and that dog. If you have any kind of a barrier, whether that's a clipboard, a stick, a backpack, anything that you can put between you and that charging animal.
I have used a clipboard. It did not work. I got bit, but, but only once in all this time. But very surprising. Dog was so aggravated to see me, was tied up to a car handle, broke this thing and charged me. I had a clipboard, but didn't really work. And it wasn't in support of my campaign, or it was for help for someone else. But anyway, well, thank you. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. Any other final comments from our team here? Thank you so much for being here. But take away, please get with our park staff, Nathan Uliot. We are hiring park rangers to work along the Truckee River where people tend to congregate and also have a lot of dogs, really, truly on walking along, let's say, Riverside or some of our larger park areas along the river. And so these are a set of new park rangers, different than the ones we've had for all the other parks. So just some ideas.
Will do. We do have really good regional collaboration, so we will continue that. And
Okay.
thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks.
Jill Fisher,
Yeah,
for the
please, Jill.
record, I do have one follow-up question, and I'm not sure if it's for you or for you. But you mentioned that you're going to be having this, or that Ms. Boland is going to be having this training. How is that being advertised?
I was wondering,
Because
too.
this is the first I've heard of
Me
it.
too. I thank you for bringing that up, because I was thinking, how can I be so involved and not even know this?
Cheyenne, for the record, Options Veterinary Care and Humane Network is who sponsors the training with Kelly Boland's assistance. And so they shared it, marketed it, did whatever press releases they did. I did send this board an email advising you all of the dates. The fall date has been changed from that original email. So when I get back to my office and can confirm that date and time, I will advise this board, and any other public tools that they make available, certainly share those. And I know that I shared it with Colleen so that her rangers could attend, or she could potentially help share it on their website as well, so we could cast that net wider and get the community involved. I will tell you, it was not well attended, and so hopefully this will
Was
be
not.
a better attendance next time if we, can get more awareness raised out there about the importance of it. But usually on the heels of an event such as the tragic thing that happened at Rancho San Rafael, people are very up in arms and very concerned about it, and then it's sort of the interest levels and support for training and things wanes. And so we're not surprised to see that, but it's no less important to continue making our community aware that the opportunity is out there to protect themselves and to be, more informed.
Just following up on that, Jill Fisher, for the record. It's on your websites, and is it on Facebook? Is this something that we personally can help disseminate to our communities?
So for the training piece of it, we did share it on our Facebook page. In terms of making something shareable to all of you in the form of an email, I will ascertain whether or not that's something that can be produced for the next one, so that I can send that to you in the update, that if you all aren't on Facebook, you can share in other platforms.
That's great. Okay.
Thank you.
Before we begin the next presentation, I just wanted to mention, just while it's fresh on my mind, it was from your presentation, Cheyenne. You mentioned that our next meeting date is October 18th. And I was concerned when I heard that Member Garcia could not attend because of conflict. And I looked at the previous Friday, which we have a flood board, which several of us are on, and then I looked at the following Friday, which is Nevada Day. And while we're thinking, just before we get to that part of the meeting where we end, I wanted to propose moving the date one day ahead because I also will likely have a conflict on that day, on the 18th. Likely, not a positive, but probably. And I don't want any of us to have to miss a meeting because there's another regularly scheduled meeting. So just, if you could look into it and assess, maybe send out a doodle poll or something to our team here to see what might work. But I'm almost positive I'm going to have a conflict on the 18th. We've already heard Member Garcia has a conflict on the 18th. I've already checked the prior and following Fridays. So look at the 17th as an idea, just, okay?
Will do, same time.
Yeah, same time. And would that work for you, Ms. Garcia? I have it on the day before. Day before at 9? 7:30 to 9. But you could then come? Potentially. What is it called? Yeah. So maybe it's in the afternoon on the Thursday. You know, we used to do 1:30, I think, sometimes, or 1. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's why I'm suggesting some kind of a poll, even if it's an individual phone call from your staff, to just look at some ideas. But I want to get a date that will work for everyone. And I looked back to last October. It was also the 18th on a Friday. And I had a conflict then. So anyway, there we go. So, all right, just everybody think about it before we get to the end of the meeting. Okay? And maybe we can then talk about it while we're here, and we don't have to individually call everyone. So, okay, so let's move on to the next item, which is 8, which is the update from Nevada Humane Society. And we're welcoming our team from NHS.
Good morning. My name is Geraldine Bryant. I'm the CEO at the Nevada Humane Society, and I am here today with Trent Bingham, and he is our Director of Operations at NHS. I want to thank this board once again for inviting us to come in to the quarterly meeting to share information about NHS and the services and programs that we provide. We'll also be providing an update on our second quarter, because we're on a calendar year, our second quarter stats. So I wanted to start out by saying that for many people, summertime is a time that we all look forward to because we get to participate in those fun summer activities. And on a personal level, I do too. But for many of us, I want to reiterate what Cheyenne was mentioning in her presentation. For many of us in animal welfare, this is not a time of year that we look forward to. It's very challenging, and it's very serious to us. We are managing an incredible influx of animals that are coming through our doors. And on average, at Nevada Humane Society, we receive over 1,000 animals a month that come through our doors needing a variety of services, from medical resources to behavior resources and interventions. So it is challenging. I don't want to sound overly, negative, but it's important, I think, for our community and certainly for this board to understand what our organizations are up against. And I would also like to take an opportunity to acknowledge our staff. In animal welfare, of course, we focus on the animals. That is our focus. But I think sometimes we can have the tendency to forget about the humans on the other side that are actually providing that care and support to those many animals. And my staff show up every day with a positive attitude. They show up with dedication, compassion, and professionalism. And many of them, especially this time of year, are having to give up personal days off and planned vacations. So just want to give a shout out to my team. So oftentimes, when we come to give these presentations, I'd like to start out by giving some updates on Nevada Humane Society. This has been a year of change. I've mentioned it before. It is no secret to this entity. But certainly we have experienced quite a bit of change and improvements over these last 14 months. And I say 14 months because that's when I joined this organization. That's when we had a leadership change. That's when a decided effort was put forth to put this organization back on the positive path that it deserved to be on and that our community deserved for it to be on. Just to name a few, I mean, we have put a concerted focus on improving the operations at NHS to meet the needs of our community and for animal services. We are, again, an increased effort has been put forth to align with ASV guidelines and best practices in the animal welfare field. In addition to the changes we've made in operations, we have also put focus on our organization internally and externally. In other words, how do our staff feel about being part of NHS? What is our role in the community? And how do our stakeholders feel about us? So again, not only is it about the kind of nuts and bolts of the operation at NHS, but who are we and what is our culture at NHS and how do we want to communicate that back out to our stakeholders? Where we netted out, I'll be perfectly honest, after all of the hard work over these last 14 months, we don't feel like the same organization that we had been in the past. And that doesn't mean that good work hadn't been happening at NHS. This is a 90-plus-year-old organization, but I can say that over the last few years, I think it's no secret, we had kind of strayed from the path that we should have been on. And I can say that today, the staff and leadership at NHS feel very positive about our organization and don't feel that it is the same. So part of the result of that is that very recently, on the 15th of this month, we rolled out a new website. That website was necessary for a variety of reasons. First, our old website was very archaic, very cumbersome. It was not serving our community. They couldn't find the information they needed, and we were unable to fully revamp or update that website for fear of it crashing, and we were told that if it did crash, we were at risk of not being able to recover it. So we jumped into a new website design initiative, and pretty excited about that, and we also feel that this new website represents our organization more appropriately and serves our community better. So what we realized too is that before we designed a new website, we realized we didn't have a brand. And that was a little surprising because, again, we're not a new organization. We had never had a brand. So what is a brand? It's the voice, it's the feel, it's the color, it's the logo, it's who we are, and people should have that feeling when they come through our doors without even realizing that they have that feeling. So certainly don't want to drag this out, but I would like to read our positioning statement because this is new for us. For Northern Nevadans who are or want to be great pet owners, the Nevada Humane Society provides nose-to-tail support in order to get pets adopted and keep them in loving homes. We do this because we are proud pet parents right alongside you who know what it takes to support and love our fur children. That is Nevada Humane Society. So we provide happiness from nose to tail. You may have noticed that along with our new brand, we updated our logo. There was a variety of issues with our previous logo and just design crunchy areas with the design. We feel that this really encapsulates Nevada Humane Society and how we feel, and we love that the tails make a heart. So,
Yeah, super cute.
with this, I am going to turn things over to Trent so he can dive into the more technical side of things and share stats on second quarter.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for having us here. I very much like to share these numbers with our community and be able to say where we're at. As was touched on, our quarter four for regional animal services is a very busy time of the year. I wish I could be as excited about the summer as so many other people are, but it is always a very difficult time. And you'll see that in the numbers that we'll be showing. Capacity is probably one of our key metrics that we need to be looking at. It is just the main area that determines how many animals we can see. There's a lot of things that go into what makes that capacity, but we look at the quarter two, and what you see is a lot of very full kennels. We have 114 kennels that are available. That's our level of capacity for care. 142 total kennels that are available to have dogs within them. For much of quarter two, we were near or above our capacity care. Our average was 76.21%, or 102 kennels. That means anytime in that quarter, if you walked into our facility, there would be 102 kennels full of dogs. When we are this full, our operational ingenuity must be used to meet community needs. We had to do many changes to allow us to continue to transfer at the rate we were from regional animal services and to continue to support the heavily increased demand for owner guardian surrenders. We would do things like institute a deep cleaning cycle in the afternoons to be able to turn over kennels as quickly as we possibly can while still maintaining cleaning standards. This trend has continued in July. In fact, this morning, when I checked our capacity, we were at 92.25% capacity. That's beyond not only our capacity care, it's at our critical level. Now we are going into, Friday is one of our busy adoption days. Saturday will be another busy adoption day. We're hoping that our community is coming forth for many of the wonderful animals that we have, but we have to be prepared for recognizing that this has been a very strong trend for the quarter, for the months, and likely for the next few months. Capacity is, of course, built upon intakes. That's where we get our animals. We receive our animals from 5 primary sources. Transfers from regional animal services makes up the bulk of our animals. Owner guardian surrenders makes up the second largest chunk. We also receive Good Samaritan strays. For dogs, that's not very many of them. For cats, that's a very large number of them. And then we also receive them back as returns, and then a smattering of other sources, such as boarding care, transfers within our other campus locations, and transfers from other partners.
Could you bring the mic a little closer?
Sure.
That would help. Okay.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. For our intakes, as I mentioned, in this case, basically 50% for quarter two came from Washoe County Regional Animal Services, and then 34% came from owner guardian surrenders. 84% totally of our intakes came from what we can consider community intakes, directly from the community of Washoe County. For our cats, 94% of our intakes came from transfers from regional animal services, owner guardian surrenders, and Good Samaritans. You can see here that stray Good Samaritan in the gray, that's 29%. We are very much in what's called kitten season. These are kittens that are found. They don't belong to people. They're basically just community cats. Good Samaritans will find them under a bush, and they will look for a place so that they can get the care that they need. These are the neonatals, and we work diligently in taking them directly from the public, as well as trying to rapidly get them from our partners at Regional Animal Services. Once they come in, they are certainly too young to fend for themselves. They don't do well in a shelter environment, and so they go to our foster volunteers who provide them the around-the-clock care that they need. When looking at the trends over time, you can see that unlike Regional Animal Services, our intakes are massively increased in total compared to previous quarter. It's 19% higher. Our shelter is not 19% larger. Our kennels aren't 19% more. And we'll see later we don't have 19% more adopters for many of these animals either. Owner guarding surrender is driving that. That's that orange on this particular chart. One of the operational changes that we took when we took over our positions is recognizing that our role in the community is very tightly tied into providing a place for people to safely relinquish their animals. We remove barriers to that and streamline that process, ensuring that those could provide a timely outcome for their animals to come in towards us. It's borne fruit. I think it has been very, very well received by people. Our wait times for being able to surrender to us have plummeted, but at the same time, it means that we do have more animals. We also do a lot of intake diversion work where we will get a call from them to what we call our animal help desk. These individuals work at Animal Help Desk to counsel others to say, hey, there might be other things. Is there something we can provide for you to keep the animal in the home? Or are there other outlets for the animals that prevent them from coming into the shelter? We as an industry have done a great job of telling people that come to the Humane Society, come to the shelter, relinquish your owner if you don't want them anymore. And it seemed like a really good idea over the last few decades. But one of the things we've also learned is that often that's not really the case. Shelters are not great for animals, but that friend of yours or that friend of a friend, they already know your dog. They already know your cat. They know their quirks. They know what they can do. Please try to reach out to them. Also, there are wonderful new tools out there that really assist in the rehoming process, so you can safely put this call out to the broader community who are maybe looking exactly for that animals. That intake diversion has been very successful, but it does mean that the ones that are left are a little bit tougher to place. We see longer lengths of stay with those who come in through owner guardian surrender versus those who come in from other transfer sources. Since the middle of last year, when we did the operational changes, every single quarter over quarter that we've compared, we've been seeing at least this level of increase in demand for owner guardian surrenders. The community is clearly hungry for it. I know that the last 3 weeks, our Animal Help Desk phones have been ringing off the hooks. Waits have gotten longer just purely because we do not have the kennel capacity to be able to get the animals in fast enough for the community demand. All in all, it's up 93% for owner guardian surrenders when you compare this quarter compared to last quarter. Intakes for cats, it sees a similar increase. The surrender increase is actually up 156%, so a much larger increase for the number of owner surrender cats that are coming to us. And we also have seen a 26% increase in strays. Outcomes are the other end of the equation. These are the happy tails, mostly. These are the happiness from nose to tails, the things that certainly make me happy every day to come in. I'm still kind of riding off of a high of a few weeks ago, seeing somebody go home and seeing the dog do what was not a safe thing to do, jumped into the driver's lap, but they both had their heads hanging out the window with the biggest grins and smiles on their faces. It was just so wonderful to see that moment and to see that connection happened. It is our primary purpose is not to be a place for animals to stay long term. We are a rehome facility. That's our goal, is to get them out of our shelter as quickly as possible. When we look at where to spend our resources, that's our goal. Primarily, animals leave through adoption. It is adoption and then a transfer to others and then a smattering of their outcomes. Euthanasia is one of them. Medical for dogs and cats provides a very large chunk of that. And then, as we'll see for cats, when we're in kitten season, those kittens that are found under the bushes, they don't thrive very well. We do the best we can. We'll send them with dedicated foster or sometimes staff to provide them as much possible care that we will be doing, but they will still not necessarily thrive in care and may end up either dying or having to be medically euthanized. All in all, we do have. Oh, I did skip a slide. Sorry, my paper printout is not. There we go. Okay, so 682 dogs were adopted out, so that's 682 happy dog stories that in my head will always picture that one for the second quarter of 2024.
So can you go back to that chart?
Sure.
So presumably, we've attempted to reunify at Animal Services. So this 1%, is that the 1% return to owner?
Yeah, we have for our Reno campus, since we're not the primary stray
Yeah.
facility, these are ones that have already spent their stray time.
Right, but
then
they're
they
still
might
getting
contact us
reunited
afterwards.
outside that straight time.
Exactly.
Right.
In some cases, that's been in a few times when they've surrendered to us, and then they've thought about it for, in some cases, just a few hours, and they come back to us and they said, no, we changed our mind, we really, really want to be dedicated to it, or there's an additional resource, and they can go back to the original living home.
Okay, and then the largest number here, 5% of the 11.
For
well,
dogs.
Sorry, 5% of the total is euthanasia, it looks like, behavior.
Correct.
Okay, so, and then the blue is your adoption rate. So now, I thought that you had previously said that the adoption rate was over 90%. So,
Our live release rate is over 93%.
yeah, so how does this differ, I guess?
The non-live outcome is 7%. So 5% plus 2% plus kind of a smattering other in the rounding creates to that difference.
So what you're saying is 1% return to owner, that would bump that up to 90. Is that what you're saying? So,
Correct. So
Okay.
live outcomes would be a combination of adoptions, return to owners, and transfers. Those are all considered live outcomes.
okay. Gotcha. Okay,
Okay.
I understand now. Thanks. You may want to present that different because that sends a different message. You know, if you just look at this other chart, the previous chart where if you include the return to owner and the transfer, that would bump up your return rate from 89 to the 93 or 4 or whatever.
I see what you're saying. So to present the pie chart in a way that allows what that big number looks like to be the live release number.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just a thought. It sends a different message.
And then cats, same thing. The blue wedge is adoptions. There are live outcomes that are in that 20% wedge. Instead of behavioral euthanasias, there were none for cats in quarter 2. There is more of the died. Those are the kittens that we were discussing, as well as some medical euthanasias. And then a smattering of medical and behavior euthanasias. Those are animals who behaviorally are unable to get the medical care that they need and must be humanely euthanized. Okay. And then this is just looking at those outcomes by comparison of 2020 to 2024 for Q2 for each of those years. As you can see, we have the larger number of outcomes. It is not quite at the same rate as the larger number of intakes that we have, but we are making more happy stories out there, which makes me happy. We have certainly increased our transfers to community partners. For animals that, for various different reasons, if we don't have the resources that they can benefit from, or maybe they're breed-specific rescue, we'll work with them on particular animals. Here's another way of looking at that. This is just the numbers so that they're nice and easy to see, and I particularly like the little bar chart on the end because it's
Well, I particularly like that too, because often, you know, this is a thought, Cheyenne, we're often looking at quarter over quarter to the last quarter, but we don't really, when we get your numbers, we don't really have a sense of trend through the year. You know, we're having to compare spring to spring, summer to summer, but I'm not getting a sense. I mean, once a year, I think you give the overall for the whole year. But this is, it's the first time I've seen the use of that, and I think is very informative. Are we going up, down, staying the same over a longer period of time? Might be an interesting adjunct. It's interesting.
And I also enjoy being able to quickly break it down just in the different categories of outcomes to see where the trends are in the different areas. We do see that nice spike in adoption. We do see a lower rate of return to owner. There's various different reasons for that. I think most of that's kind of, for lack of a better word, bureaucratic, where we sort of changed when we would use that as the actual outcome versus just a surrender.
But, and just to be clear on the trends, you're just still looking at the quarter, the same quarter. So
Correct.
in this
Each
case,
of these columns is the
summer,
second
summer,
quarter.
summer. But you could do it when you're comparing quarters to a year. You could also do a bar chart for the year.
Correct.
So anyway, very interesting. Okay.
Correct. Then for our cats, we do have a decrease in outcomes for the cats. It's just a 7% decrease. We did have a 1% increase on intakes in quarter two. So we are feeling a little bit of a pinch. We are keeping more of them in foster homes longer to assist that. Some of that is probably a bottleneck related to spay-neuter capacity. We have a lot of kittens that all came in at once. They can't all get fixed at the same time. There's only so many hours in the day for the vets. Adoptions are down 13%, and I think that's another portion of it. It fits some of the general trends we are seeing nationwide in animal welfare. Adopters are being much more particular, and they have a narrower idea of what they're looking for when they are adopting.
Well, I hope we come back to that because we really need to talk about that, I think.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big decrease in adoptions.
It is, and it is definitely felt. I think that quarter two tends to fall kind of right at the end of one part of kitten season, and that's when we're taking in a lot more kittens. And then it can change when, because it's so weather dependent, we had an earlier spike in the beginning of kitten season. I think we're seeing a longer middle area. I expect what we'll see for adoptions is that our adoptable kittens, when they start coming back in from foster, that'll lead to fulfilling more of that as well.
Right, but you were comparing quarter to quarter. So
Correct.
even though you're talking about seasonal change, this already counts for seasonal change.
It does, but this year kitten season started a month earlier.
Why is that?
The weather.
It was warmer, so they
Mhm.
began,
It was a milder winter, and then
Oh.
it got warmer about a month earlier, and so we
very
ended
interesting.
up seeing the kittens show up about that much earlier.
Wow, that is interesting. So another impact of climate change. Potential impact of climate change is interesting.
We
Who
will be
would've
intrigued
thought?
to see what it does at the other end of the season as well.
Okay.
Let's see, same chart for cats. It just does a better job of showing the reduction in adoptions. Again, with the return to owner rate, that went from 7 to 0 for much the same reasons. Our return to field rate is one I do want to call out. We went from 19 to 41. These are the cats where we have addresses that they are known to come from, community cats, and then we ensure that they get the medical care that they need and return them directly to their homes, which are not people. Let's see. Length of stay, much like our partners at Regional Animal Services, if you have one kennel and you have a length of stay of 5 days versus that same kennel, if there was a length of stay of 1 day, you'd have be able to use that kennel for 5 animals. It is a very key metric for us as well, and we have, unfortunately, there's not the equivalent of a stray period where it's kind of an adoption period. We are at the whims of what people want to adopt, customer demand, for lack of a better word. It's one of my favorite metrics, and I'll try not to drone on too much about the numbers because I know sometimes can get a little too numbery. One thing I do want to point out on this stack version, which is a 100% stack chart, is it really does a good job of seeing that there was a trend at Nevada Humane Society of more and more longer stay outcomes. We were not seeing animals leave in the period of time in which our facility was built, which was, the idea was 14 days. They kept staying longer and longer, lingering longer and longer, and we have worked very diligently to reverse that trend, and I think we're seeing fruits of that labor. And there's a couple of different methods we did. Some of that's just operational efficiency. Another portion is very much reducing the barriers to adoption. Some of them were physical, where we didn't let people come into the kennels, to the kennel areas to be able to make that visual connection with the animal. And then others were more approach, be more welcoming. That new brand that we have is another step of that. Be welcoming, make it feel like a very positive experience, someplace you want to go.
I had a comment on this, and I may have told this story before, but One of my animals that I adopted from the Humane Society is one of my best. He's no longer with us, but he had been there for 6 or 7 months. And I'm just very grateful that you did not euthanize this giant big dog. He was like 100 pounds, black dog. He was a mix of a Newfie and a Lab. So he was a Newfie Lab mix. And the deal is just as a learning experience, we had planned to go there, my husband and I. My husband got there sooner. He surveyed the entire place and said, "There's no dog here for us." And I go, "Okay, so I guess we should go." I mean, I was going to just leave. And he goes, "No, why don't you go look?" And I said, "But you've already looked. If it's not, it has to meet both of our desires." And he goes, No, I think you should go look." So I went and looked. And thank goodness you did have, where you could visit the dogs. You had, what do you call it?
The pods or the,
Well, you could be there with the dogs.
the visitation rooms.
Yeah, you could visually see the dogs. So the dog that I found, this black lab, Newfie Lab, was black. It was sitting in the way back of the kennel in a depressed mode. Did not come to the front to have a conversation or wag a tail or do anything. Was obviously been there a long time. Was very depressed about being locked in a kennel. And also was incredibly dirty. So, in dreadlocks. Mm-hmm. And I wondered at that time, I thought, wow, this dog's been here a long time, but doesn't seem to have had a bath. And I didn't know if you have bathing facilities there. I mean, a clean dog is easier to adopt than a dirty dog, right? I mean, they just look good and they look fluffy and all of that. So I didn't know if you have facilities to keep the animals up and groomed, and how often you could even do that. But it was a major learning lesson for me. One, I learned black dogs are as hard to adopt as black cats. Mm-hmm. I learned that big dogs are very hard to adopt. I learned that some dogs are so depressed that they're not going to socialize. I made that dog come talk to me, and then I asked to visit the dog in the room, and we had an incredibly positive experience. The downside of that experience, and I don't know if this is still true, was that we had another dog, right? And so we wanted to see how these dogs got together. And we know that our other dog is not good in confined spaces. So we were very clear to arrange with the Humane Society that when we brought our other dog for visitation, we needed to do it outside. You have an outside area to walk. Well, when we got there, they'd completely forgotten, didn't know, weren't willing to accommodate. Insisted we bring our other dog into the facility. Well, as predicted, the dogs went wild. They not happy to meet each other. They both 100-pounders in this pretty confined area. Like immediately barking ensued. It was horrible, and we thought, oh my gosh, this, can this work? But we were pretty confident if they could meet in a more open space, they get to know each other with like freedom, both on a leash. But anyway, we decided to take a risk, bring the dog home, give it a shot at home where we have a larger space. It was a little challenging of a transition, but it worked. Ultimately, dogs never became best friends. They didn't. And this dog that we brought from Humane was definitely afraid of a mirror, right? They saw themselves in a mirror, lost their mind. But I learned a lot from that whole darn experience, and I only can feel for you. I'm just so grateful that you did not euthanize this dog or transfer it out somewhere. I could never have found this dog. Amazing member of our family. And so, look beyond what my husband's preconceived notions were, all the things, right? I learned a lot from that experience. Like I said, these dogs never became best friends. Now, this is in contrast to another dog that came to our house, to our gate, and asked to be let in, was a wandering stray. I thought, okay, fine. This was after the same dog had died, so we still have the same dog that didn't get along with that dog. Came in, they were friends immediately within like moments, mirroring each other, laying together, playing together, a completely different experience. But so we adopted that dog too. It ended up, one of our neighbors was about to bring the dog to the Humane Society that day. It had been a rescue, found it, was bringing it to, anyway, we adopted it before it ever got involved with either you or animal services. But so much to be learned about this adoption experience, and I'm going to reiterate, very grateful that the space constraints that you did not euthanize this dog or transfer it to another state or something, whatever the things you are that you do, And we had the opportunity, to have this phenomenal experience with this dog. But bathing facilities, what's the story there? Do you have those options?
We do. We have a grooming tub that we use, and we actually have a member of our dog team right now who came from grooming.
Oh, really?
Groomers are wonderful staff into our kennel team because they've handled all sorts of personalities and animals on them. And it's one of our priorities that we're looking at for reducing the barriers is very much realizing that one of the barriers can be, what do they physically look like?
Right.
Do they look groomed? Do they?
Right? Do they look like just tossed up in the mud, or are they looking all
Exactly.
proud,
Yeah, it's always a heart-wrenching moment when people, if they were to be walking by and see nothing but matted animals.
Yeah.
And it's not a great practice.
Yeah.
That was your
Well, I'm glad to
experience
hear that you have that now.
there. Yeah. And I'm also very happy, part of your story is that one of the things I really enjoy about Nevada Humane Society is we do not euthanize for time or space. And that our community supports us in that mission is so important to me. So for length of stay for the dogs, you can see the trend here, that there has been a very large increase in adoptions that happen within 0 to 7 days. By having that big of a chunk, that opens up more kennel space, allows us to get more dogs adopted out. A little bit decrease in 8 to 14, but I think that's mostly attributed by growth in the 0 to 7 day period. For cats, for Q2, since it's kitten season, that's where our length of stay is going to be a lot higher. Most of the ones that are staying longer, they are not physically within our shelter. They are within those foster volunteers. But we do see a trend towards shorter length of stay in general over the last 5 years, so that one's been on a good trend for some years. Again, we can also see that there's a large spike in the 0 to 7 day trend. I attribute some of that to that reducing barriers to adoption and being able to get animals as quickly onto the adoption floor as we can, so that when people do see one, they're able to very quickly say, yep, I want that one, and they're not waiting to be processed in various different manners. For dogs and some of our cats as well, one of the changes we made is that instead of having a back of house area where all new animals go to, we actually will have animals prior to necessarily having spay or neuter be seen by the public and be able to be getting met sooner in the process. All right, and on that note, I'll pass this back over to Julie.
Okay. First of all, thank you for that lovely story. That was really nice to hear. And I reiterate what Trent was saying, is that we don't have a time limit. And while we don't want to see animals stay in our care for extended periods of time, it is not uncommon. And we recently, just this month, have seen several long-term dogs go home that had been with us for numerous months. So very happy about that. I'm going to wrap up this presentation with just highlighting a few of our public services that we provide to the community. NHS does provide a wide variety of support for our community beyond being the owner, guardian, surrender facility and the primary transfer partner for animal services. This includes spay and neuter for community TNR partners, low-cost vaccine and microchip clinics, our TNR program for community cats, our working cat adoption program, which Trent highlighted earlier, additional support for local community cats and their caregivers, and then, of course, our pet pantry program, which provides food to families in our community experiencing hardship. On average, we distribute 15,000 pounds of dog and cat food each and every month. So that is a lot of food out into our community to try to keep pets with the families that love them. And we also have our our clinic services for public, and that is, again, just here in Reno. So NHS now has a low-cost public vaccine and microchip clinic available twice a week, which is on Wednesdays and Sundays. We have doubled the number of vaccine and microchip services we're able to provide to our community. We support our local cat TNR groups. That support remains strong with available community spay and neuter dedicated to these groups. We know that our community desperately needs public spay and neuter, affordable access to spay and neuter. It is really the only thing that is going to decrease the number of animals coming through Cheyenne's organization and mine. In years past, there was a robust program at NHS when COVID happened, along with many other shelters across the country. In fact, most other shelters across the country, that program was discontinued. We very strongly desire to have our public spay and neuter program grow and be robust again. Not everything can happen overnight. We recently, in the last month and a half, have opened our public services up for owned cats, and we do offer low-cost spay and neuter for owned cats twice a week. That is just the beginning. There is a lot that we have to put into place as far as resources to be able to be poised to offer robust, affordable spay and neuter to owned dogs and cats. Again, Vice Mayor Dewar reminded me at this last presentation and then at a recent presentation to always remind the public that we spay and neuter all of our shelter animals.
Right.
That is a given for me, and so I sometimes forget to really reiterate that to the public. So we are spaying and neutering thousands of, all of our shelter animals that get adopted that need to be sterilized are sterilized prior to going out, and that is many thousands. So again, I am just really talking about the public spay and neuter that is so needed in our community. Community cats. So we are providing a more formalized support for community colony caregivers, which allows us to directly support an increasing number of cats staying in our community, with over 13,000 pounds of food distributed in the second quarter to colony caregivers. So again, all of this food is typically coming from community members who choose to support NHS and the families in our communities that need food by donating that food to us. Our team then repackages that food and distributes it back out into the community. This program is also ramping up to return cats directly to the field, and it's part of our working cat program where we adopt cats back out to do a job out into our community. We have also fielded, through our Community Cats team, we have fielded and responded to almost 700 phone calls and 760 emails to support the various community members' needs with cats in our community, and that was just during second quarter. And finally, I would like to conclude this presentation with just one of a plethora of happy endings and happy stories that we see at NHS. Zumi here was a transfer from Animal Services. It was suspected that he had been hit by a car. He had a severe injury to his leg. He initially presented in intense pain. He was shut down, and his go-to behavior was to snap at anyone that got near him that would try to interact with him, understandably, because he was in pain. But that does create a barrier in how we are able to assist and help animals in that type of condition. With gentle handling, we were able to transfer Zumi over to our side of the building for medical assessment, and it was determined that the only course of action for Zumi was amputation. So due to Zumi's high FAS, which means fear, anxiety, and stress levels, his recovery was initially rough. Again, didn't want to be handled, wasn't that amenable to being interacted with by humans. But again, patience persevered. And Zumi was also enrolled in our Focus Dog program to help him build confidence and trust in humans. With consistent behavioral interventions, Zumi allowed for greater handling, which eased his recovery. And I'm so happy to say that he was adopted out after about 2 months in our care of intense, again, interventions, both medically and behaviorally. A lot of resources went into this one cute pup, and he was adopted out at the end of June. So he is now known as Baruch, or Baruch, and he is living his best life. And we are really happy about stories like this, because again, it really speaks to our community, speaks to our organizations, and the dedication that our staff have towards these animals. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and I'd like to open things up if there are any questions.
Right, again, a really good presentation, thank you. And I just really get the sense how far things have come from a year ago. Last summer we were struggling. This summer, we're doing so much better.
Thank you.
Yes, I did have one question, Trudy Broussard for the record, that goes back to the very beginning of Trent's part of the presentation. You said these initial phone calls, you are often able to divert. Do you have a way to track? Is that 1% or what?
We do track all of the calls and emails that come into our animal help desk. I don't know offhand, do you know what their percentage of diversions is? It's not at the top of my mind, but I'm happy to include that in our presentation.
Well, I do think that's an interesting thing, and of course, it helps you.
Sure, yeah.
And I just wondered if it were a significant enough number to put more resources into that, and I don't know whether that means social media or just somebody else to help on the phones or.
Sure. It is, yeah, and that's a very good question, and thank you for that. Our animal help desk is it is a resource for our community, and while they are successful in diverting some surrenders, and again, that number I think is just not popping up in the top of my mind right now. Data shows that nationally shows that by the time somebody makes that phone call, the majority of the time they have made that decision to give up their animal, and there isn't much we can do that would change their mind. However, that doesn't speak for all of them. And so I do believe that additional resources for that program are necessary, and then also anytime we can get in front of it as early as possible when it's just an inkling of an idea, and part of that will be the success of that will be in post-adoption support, and that is very much a priority for us over this next year.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So-
trying to head off the problem before it's so big that people throw up their hands and say, I'm done.
Well, I mean, and who are these? I mean, I understand some people are moving, some people have a new baby or an adoptee or something. But, I mean, I don't know how many people, though, are feeling the economic pinch. Is that something you help with? I mean, we heard about the food programs.
Yeah,
So-
not in direct financial support. We don't. At this time, it's a situation of we're trying to offer as much support and resources and pointing the public in the right direction as we can. Pet food, of course, medical care. That is something that there is a great need for access to affordable medical care for pets. That isn't a program that we have that we can offer to the public. We do have a program at NHS called the Hope Fund, and it is a restricted fund that we rely on to allow us to go above and beyond what is typical medical care for animals. That is, the amputations, the enucleations, the mass removals, things like that. That is not a given that every shelter across this country has the ability to provide that enhanced medical care, yet we do. So I would love someday for us to be able to have that fund to go above and beyond for the public. I know that Animal Services does have a fund, and I don't want to speak to it because I don't know all the details, but I do know that Animal Services does have. I think it's the CARES Fund.
And is that also donation-driven, Cheyenne? Yes. So people make donations, and you can then use this pot of money, because it's not government funds, to further help animal families or...
Cheyenne, for the record, our donation fund helps. We have a whole protocol for approval, whether it's income qualifier or age qualifier, that will help with seniors or pets of low income to provide medical services or grooming, intended to be one-time assistance programs.
Gotcha.
Are
All
there
right,
any
any other board comments? Oh, yes, Ms. Fisher.
I have a question going back to your outcomes with dogs. I noticed there was a very significant increase in behavioral euthanasia. What's driving that?
Well, I'll start this, but Trent, you can feel free to jump in. So a variety of reasons. The majority of the adverse behaviors that we see in dogs are coming as publicly surrendered dogs. Oftentimes that is the reason they are surrendering them in the first place. And you also saw the correlating increase in our publicly surrendered numbers of dogs. So it would make sense that the trend would follow. I will say that some of our protocols we have tightened up from in years past. It was not quite as much of a focus on unsafe behavior being placed back out into our community. So, Nevada Humane Society, we are here for the animals. We take every outcome extremely seriously, and we certainly want to keep our euthanasia rate as low as possible, but we also don't lose sight of the fact that we are the animal welfare professionals, and we have a responsibility to not put animals into our community that we determine are not safe for our community. And I don't know, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
One other thing that I'll add that's a broader topic in animal welfare has been kind of a change in general dog behavior that has been seen in the public. There's a lot of potential causes for it. It might be because of the large increase in dog ownership that happened when the pandemic occurred, correlated also with poor socialization. So you had some poor backyard breeding leading into a larger number of animals that were not getting out into the public and being seen more. We know one of the types of behaviors that we're seeing a lot more of that we didn't used to see as much as an industry was what's often called jumpy, mouthy, rowdy dogs, and especially the large ones. So these are the German Shepherds that are just so excited, and they're rowdy and they're jumping and they're getting what's called hyper aroused. While doing so, they might start using their mouth, and when they're using their mouth, they can, not through necessarily aggression, end up doing dangerous level of damage to other individuals. It's a higher portion of what we're seeing nationally, and it's also a higher portion of what we are seeing internally. And it's probably related to that upbringing, that lack of socialization. Socialization is so key for dogs learning. It's not appropriate to jump on animals. It's not appropriate to jump on people. It's not appropriate to be using your mouth in this situation. And that's one of the areas that we certainly in our post-adoption support services really want to be focusing in on, is helping people help the animals not continue these behaviors and to learn to not do these.
To be clear, behavior that is simply jumpy, mouthy, and rowdy does not make them a euthanasia candidate. But sometimes it can lead to more dangerous behaviors. But the short answer is the correlation, the increase in euthanasia for behavior is directly correlated to the increase in publicly surrendered animals for oftentimes unsafe behavior.
Jill Fisher for the record. To follow up on that, do you guys offer education to people so they can not end up with these outcomes?
We do the best we can, and primarily that is coming, well, from our animal help desk when members of our public call and say, I have this animal and these are my concerns. Our staff do direct them to a variety of different resources, absolutely. But again, post-adoption, enhanced post-adoption support is one of our priority initiatives for the coming year and beyond.
Thank you.
So on the same note, I was going to ask, and I asked this of our Parks Director already. At one time, and I know because I participated, the city had a dog training program. They would take about 25, 30 dogs in a class, and we brought our dogs, and it was a really cheap and effective way to get your dogs trained. And it really helped us to get our dogs relating better to other dogs, get our dogs being willing to follow simple commands without going to a whole command, training school. It was it was cheap. I have been working with our Parks and Recreation folks to add programming, but I don't know, and this is for you as well, Cheyenne, I don't know what the status of that is. Are we offering community-wide, whether Sparks, Reno, or at the county, or any other place, these kind of opportunities today?
Sure. Jerlene, for the record, I can say that at Nevada Humane Society, we currently are not, but that is part of the initiative to offer the post-adoption support. I am very excited to say that for the first time in NHS history, we are establishing an actual behavior department. And we have just hired a behavior and transfer manager who is currently right now relocating from Minnesota.
Oh.
And she is a very accomplished individual. And that is what is going to help propel us forward with our initiative to offer post-adoption support, which will include some form of manners classes
Right.
or things like that. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and what's your thought on that? Do we do any of that or work with parks or?
Cheyenne, for the record, at this time, we don't have a program to address those.
Okay.
Kind of falls outside of the scope of what we would focus on, but certainly a need in the community.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson.
Actually, on that note, I just want to give a plug for Sparks Parks and Rec Department.
Yeah.
They have a very low-cost dog training program that's offered. And what's cool about that, too, is if you pay to go through it the first time, I believe it's like $100. But you pay to go through that. I think it's a 6-week class. They'll let you keep coming back as long as you want, as long as the dog still has
Like
all
a
of its current-
refresher or something?
Well, the current records, medical
Oh.
records and everything, so they know that they're not going to be transferring any disease or anything
Yeah.
over to the others.
I see one of our members leaving. Before you leave, can you just comment on your availability for either Friday afternoon or Thursday afternoon?
Thursday afternoon.
Would be the preference? Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
may I ask, and then there
Yeah.
was one other thing I just wanted to touch on. In the director's report, in fact, Member Garcia asked it about the heat and the impact on her facility. And she actually kind of threw it to you guys as well that we might want to ask. So what have you seen?
Well, this is a challenging time of year. I can say that on our side of the building, when our building was designed and built, there is a main large thoroughfare hallway that is open to the public with our public adoption areas on either side, and it is the main area to get to our meet and greet rooms for dogs. And when the building was designed, it was not designed with adequate HVAC
In the hall.
ducting, and it's incredibly hot. And so we have to bring in a big, swamp cooler to help cool things down. It's a challenge. I will also say that our dog areas that are open to the public, we have an indoor and outdoor area. The indoor area is, of course, climatized, and the dog can be in there, which is also a best practice that aligns with ASV guidelines, that any animal should have a way to exit from public if they don't want to interact, because that gives them freedom of choice and lowers their FAS scores, which is fear, anxiety, and stress. So the inside areas are staff only and volunteer only. The public access the outdoor areas, and this time of year, it's in direct sun, it's incredibly hot, and it's uncomfortable for the public, and it's uncomfortable for many of our animals. We would, in a perfect world, if funding wasn't such an issue, we would love to be able to put shade over those outdoor kennel areas with misters. That would make it more pleasant for the animals. They would be more willing to interact with our public, and we think it would actually help to some degree increasing the interactions that our animals have with the public and adoptions.
So
Go ahead.
going back to the cooling inside the building, is it just the hallways that get hot?
We actively, Trent for the record, we actively work with the county facilities department. They've done enormous work with us over the last year. This year compared to last, they have really stepped up and assisted us. It turned out that we were kept as kind of the same as all county office buildings. They would turn off HVAC at night or have it at a reduced level, and we've been able to make it so that it is always on, which of course puts more strain on the facility, but it means that they are keeping within the ASV guidelines for all of the animal temperature areas. There are still areas that are stuffier than we'd love, especially some of our quarantine rooms that we have to take a little special care, and some of the other areas that we've sort of over the years repurposed from office space to being animal space, and then some other areas that are just office areas that don't have their own individual kind of HVAC thermostat area on it. It's kind of a story that I expect of a facility this age, and I know that when we've met with them, they're giving you that face that says you need to start thinking about capital investment for these type of problems and replacing of this very expensive equipment.
Okay, thank you. So I hear two asks.
Yeah.
One is for capital improvement funds, and then secondly, that we need to get the community to step up and help with some improvements. Because, yeah, I could understand, I mean, if it's a 100-degree day, the pet's not wanting to be coming outside to interact with people, and likewise, I'm probably not going to be wanting to stand there visiting for very long as well.
Exactly, yeah. And also, Councilman Anderson, thank you so much for sharing about Sparks Park and Rec. I had no idea, I'm not sure if you did, Trent, but I'm going to pass that information on to our animal help desk and make sure that they know about that as a potential resource to share when people call.
And maybe make a call to Reno and see if we are actually offering or have stopped offering, or if they hear from you and hear that there's a demand and interest, that's where they really, drives the programming. Just Naomi Dewar saying, hey, this would be good, not enough to change, add a new program, but hearing from you. And just as an example, I mean, in the last, 6 months, we've started a senior cooking program, been incredibly successful, never had anything like that. Full attendance. In other words, sometimes you don't really know what the community wants, and until you sort of strike a perfect note. Nobody knew pickleball was such a desired sport until it was. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't planning for it or anticipating it. So just having the Parks Department, calling them and saying, we would love to see Reno add, like Sparks has, a low-cost animal training program for the community. This would help us with adoptions and post-animal care. I think we go a long way. I mean,
I agree.
So
Yes.
just FYI.
We will follow up.
Yeah, great. Thank you so
Certainly.
much for these ideas.
Well, thank you so
yeah.
much. I also want, on the topic of the next meeting, of course, we have October 18th slated
Right.
originally for this next Animal Services Advisory Board meeting. Unfortunately, if it is held on October 17th, there is a likelihood we would not be able to attend. That is our quarterly all-staff meeting that we have blacked out for PTO, and there's a lot of planning that goes into that to make sure that our staff are available to it. Potentially, if it was in the afternoon, depending on the time, we may. Of course, this has no bearing of whether or not you have the meeting, but I
No,
just
but-
want
well, it's
to,
important.
I just want to make sure that I do communicate
Right.
as soon as possible that
Right.
it's questionable whether we would be able to attend,
Right. Right.
if so invited.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, having you at these meetings has been a huge improvement. So really improved communication. So I want to do everything to facilitate that. We just heard from Member Garcia. I don't know if it was a must to have it on Thursday afternoon or a preference. So maybe you can follow up with her, but in a few minutes, we're going to pull the board and see where the rest of us are. And we don't
Okay.
have everybody here. There might be other challenges too with other missing members. So thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Really appreciate where things are today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we are entering our closing item for the board, which is updates from the staff and board member requests, and this is where we want to talk about future meeting date, so let's just start with that. I'm available both Friday and Thursday afternoon. I think that is the preference. I don't recall when we've had those meetings, if it's 1 or 1:30, but it sounds like 1:30 might be better, just given their world. And were you raising your hand? I'm sorry, no. Okay, so are there preferences here from the board members or thoughts?
Trudy Broussard for the record. At the moment, I'm free. I'm always hoping my family will go to Mexico or Hawaii, but it's not on
Not
the
happening.
calendar.
Okay, and you?
Jill
Ms.
Fisher for the record. I am available anytime on either of those days.
Okay. Mr. Anderson?
If it's on the 17th, I'd be available in the afternoon.
That's a Thursday?
That's on Thursday.
Yeah.
If it's on the 18th, the earliest I'd be able to be here is 2 o'clock.
So you also have a challenge on Friday?
Well, I'm good in the morning,
Oh, you are good in the morning?
but I've got a mid-morning.
Mid-morning, okay.
Early afternoon.
Good to know, and, okay. I'm available both afternoons. Yeah, I do have it looks like a commitment on Friday morning. I checked with some of our other boards that have quarterly meetings as well, and it's not on either of these dates, so I think we're good there. What if we move forward with an idea of, checking Friday and Thursday afternoon with the rest of the other members that aren't here, and also following up with Ms. Garcia? Was it a must to be on Thursday or a preference? Okay,
So to clarify, we're talking about Thursday, the 17th afternoon, or
Right.
Friday, the 18th
afternoon.
afternoon.
Right, and it
And-
could be two to this point. And that might be better, although that's on Friday, right?
That's Friday.
And that you're available on Friday? Yeah. So, but I want all the members to be able to participate. So if we do move it to Thursday to accommodate 1 or 2 members, I want to make sure it can accommodate another member. So it looks like if it is Friday, it would be 2, not 1 or 1:30. And it would go like 2 to 5. And then if it is Thursday, the 17th, it looks like we could start as early as, well, again, there's a preference. Your training meeting might be over by 2?
If it was on Thursday.
Oh, we need you to speak into the
Yeah.
record, so, sorry.
Geraldine, for the record, if it was on Thursday, the 17th, and began at 2 PM, we would likely be able to make that.
Okay. So we're looking at both afternoons starting at 2 as some options. And let's just see how many board members can participate. Okay, you can check the original date too. I mean, it may, date and time, but I'm saying probably 2 of us already. We can't make Friday the 18th in the morning. Okay, so, all right. So we'll leave it open for those 2. We'll hear from you as soon as we can, so we can all get that calendared. And everybody just try to respond. I mean, the problem is a lot of times people do overlook emails, so feel free to send an email, but also feel free to do a follow-up call within 24 hours, just to get this locked down and on everybody's calendar, okay? Okay, all right. Okay, so there's that. Now, we also want to open for topics for future agendas. Any follow-ups from today that we have? Yeah? Let me ask, I guess Cheyenne, I know we had a further conversation about park behavior. Do you feel like that she's put to bed? Or is there more to talk about? I know the fees are going to get rolled out too. I have a feeling that would be topic of conversation just to get early reaction to the fees.
Cheyenne, for the record, I personally feel like the scope of the influence that Animal Services has for us, it's done.
Okay.
We are working with Kelly Bolin
Yeah.
to host the training at our
Which I think
location.
is great.
I'll continue to work with Colleen in whatever capacity she feels is appropriate for our Washoe County parks. But I do feel like we have, incorporated messaging into our social media platforms to try to throw out tidbits of information, provided it to our field staff. And I feel like the subject is a normal part of our everyday conversations with our community. And so for my intents and purposes, I feel like the subject is moot at this point.
Okay, good. So I think the biggest outcome from today that would have engaged most of us is how do we help you deal with the hot car situation? And I really do think we can take it to the next level. I do. I know, again, the city of Reno is already working on some additional messaging with some people that had written in, and I don't think they've rolled it out yet. I think it's been months in the making. So I think we could do something quickly here, even if we get a sign only at Costco as an example, not to call them out, but just, I'm a member there too. It sounds like you have good relations there too. I've been a member for 25 years. It seems like with both your chair and vice chair talking to them, that's one place that we could have an impact. But I really do think we can help. So please put us to work on this. Okay. And then maybe we can report on it on future agenda items. Just did we have any success in the ensuing quarter on that kind of program? Okay. Anything else?
I was just going to add to that, my impulse was to go home and print up a sign, and then I thought, nah, that's not going to work. Signs have to look official, and, so if you can give us prototypes or make something official.
Cheyenne, for the record, we do have posters.
Yeah.
The issue that we will encounter with corporate stores is it has to be approved through corporate.
Right.
They don't just allow you to post them, but we do have posters with the NRS statute that talks about the, hot dog law, and so we share those far and wide.
So I'm just thinking this current City of Reno effort is really on hot pavement. It's not on hot cars. It's on hot pavement, and that's why we're looking at posting it lots of places about pavement. And I still see lots of people walking in the middle of the afternoon, late afternoon, with very hot pavement, that's built up all day. And I will tell you, my dogs, I have never seen them this level of crashed out every afternoon. It's like clockwork. They are in by 1. They are crashed out on the cold floors, any cold floors they can find. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm observing a fairly significant behavioral change even from any other summer. Because this is a very entrenched, long-standing heat wave. I've been living in Reno the better part of 50 years, and I've never seen it like this. I don't mean the dogs, I mean the heat itself. It's usually a 2-week hot period. This is obviously extending far beyond that, and it doesn't show signs of abating other than we're starting to have some summer thunderstorms, afternoon thunderstorms, which helps. But I don't know, whatever we can do, I think it's really critical. It's our focus.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Anything else for next meeting, different, or, okay. All right, well, I think that's it for that agenda item. And then we have our final public comment. No, Madam Clerk, no.
There is no additional public comment either from the public in person or Zoom.
All right, well, thank you. Well, with that, I don't have a gavel, but I am going to declare us adjourned. Okay? All right, thanks everyone for being here and any folks that have listened online today. Take care and have a great rest of your summer.